Hey guys, this is Nick, and today I'd like to tackle something that comes back often in the comments and generally on the internet, and that's we have too many distros. Linux is too fragmented. It makes users run away and it wastes valuable contributor time, developer time. So let's see if this opinion has any truth to it right after today's sponsor's message. Thanks to Linode for sponsoring this video. Linode is the largest independent cloud service provider, meaning they provide hosting that you can use to run your own servers, whatever you need one for. I use Linode to host my own Nextcloud instance, but thanks to their one-click apps, you can deploy any type of server in one click. If you're a gamer, you can easily start your own Valheim, Minecraft or CSGO server. But if you're looking for a VPN, you can also one-click deploy your own, using WireGuard or OpenVPN, and you can ensure there is no middleman trying to intercept what you're connecting to. Linode is affordable and has consistent pricing with data centers all over the globe. You can upgrade your servers in one click, just as I did on my Nextcloud instance to add more storage, and you have real humans behind it all to talk to 24/7 by phone or support ticket. Even if you use the cheapest plan available, which is $5 a month, by the way. They also have very detailed documentation if you don't like talking to other human beings, which I know I'm not a fan of. If you use the link in the description to sign up, you get a $100 credit to use on your own servers, so head over there and give it a go. I am certain you won't regret it. So, it is undeniable that the Linux ecosystem, the Linux world of distributions is incredibly fragmented. It's hard to find a complete list, but there is a list online called lwn.net, which lists 275 distros. It has Alma Linux and Rocky Linux, which are two relatively recent distros, so it should be maintained. Distrowatch also lists 273 distributions, so I think we can estimate that the number of Linux distros is in this 275 ballpark. And that's an enormous number. People are right to assume that newcomers wouldn't know where to start if they had to contend with 275 choices. Well, one could always direct them to my channel. This is a great place to start if you're a Linux beginner. Now, it's understandable that a lot of people would think that we have too many distributions and that the time that people spend creating them could be better employed working on a single core set of Linux system or just a single one. Except that this won't happen. Ever. Let's get that out of the way immediately. We can't force people to not create distributions. The very nature of Linux and open source means that anybody that is so inclined can grab a distribution, change the theme, change the wallpaper, grab a few other packages, install some default software, repackage that and calls that a distro. There is nothing we can do against that. Hell, even the two distros I mentioned earlier, Alma Linux and Rocky Linux, are basically just rebrands of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Now people will keep doing that as a joke, as a way to learn something, as a way to try and make something better, because they're pissed at something a distro did, or because a distro that they used to like isn't maintained anymore. There is nothing we can do about that. Now that this is out of the way, let's tackle one of the first arguments to defend this opinion that we have too many distros. And this argument is what I call the fallacy of added time. Basically, it states that we are wasting valuable time and resources, which could be better employed if we directed everybody on the same single project. And that is completely untrue, in my opinion. First, there's the fact that these people creating new distributions are volunteers for the most part. They are unpaid volunteers. They decided that they wanted to do this. And it doesn't mean that just because they wouldn't do this, they would contribute to something else. They have to be willing to contribute. And also maybe they tried to contribute to an existing distro, but their contributions weren't accepted, or the distribution was taking a direction that they didn't like, or they just wanted to try and learn something, or maybe they just didn't want to contribute to an existing stuff and they wanted to learn how to make a Linux distro. These are all valid reasons to do so, and there's nothing we can do about this. Unpaid volunteers can be coerced into working for something that they don't believe in or that they don't want to, thankfully. Second, there is the common misconception that the more people you add to a task, the faster it goes. If you've ever worked in software development, you know that this is completely untrue. After you reach a certain mass, the more people you add, the slower you get. Now, as a software consultant once told one of my ex-bosses, do you think your baby would have taken less than 9 months to pop out if you had a second woman to help you carry it? And third, the people who create new Linux distributions don't necessarily have the skills to help on the tasks that are needed on other Linux distributions. Just because you know how to grab a few packages, change the branding, change the theme, the wallpaper, and install software, and then package that into an ISO, doesn't mean that you would be of any help to another Linux distribution. It just means that you know how to create your own. It doesn't mean that you know how to fix bugs, how to test software, how to write new software, how to integrate new components, how to work on GNOME extensions or KDE layouts. So with that said, even the most major Linux distributions could certainly benefit from a lot more help, from more maintainers, more testers, more software developers. And some of the people creating Linux distros right now could probably help with that. But there's a reason why they don't do it. And also it doesn't mean that everyone would have the skills to do it. Basically, if we divided the number of Linux distros by 2, I can guarantee that the remaining Linux distros wouldn't move twice as fast. Now, the second main argument that is advanced by people who think that we have too many distros is that it's very confusing for users. And this one, I agree with. I took business school, and in business school, they tell you, you have to have just enough choices so that the user will decide between your products, but you also have to have not enough choices that the user has indecision, has choice paralysis, and just walks away without deciding. A newcomer to Linux can definitely get lost when trying to pick his distro. First, they have to understand that a Linux system isn't a unified single OS. There are multiple choices. Once they have that figured out, they will generally go around the internet and ask, what's the best Linux distro? And the answer to that is NixOS. Now, just kidding. This question, of course, isn't the right one. It should be, what is the right Linux distribution for my needs? Because this is one of the main reasons why we have so many distributions. Because each distro, well, most distros, suit a certain type of user needs. From their software choices, their user experience, the default layout, the graphical desktop environment that they use, or the fact that they don't use one, the stability, the update rhythm, everything is picked to answer a specific need. And that's super confusing for somebody who's coming from the proprietary operating system world. On Windows or on macOS, you have a one-size-fits-all system. There is one experience with the same set of default apps, the same desktop layout, the same user experience that is supposed to fill every single user's needs. And we both know it's impossible, so basically all the users tend to install software after the fact to change their experience to make it more tailored to their needs. For example, a Windows user installing the Chocolatey package manager. These guys are basically creating their own distributions of Windows or macOS, but after the fact, after they've installed it. And they have to recreate all those steps every time they reinstall or change computers. On Linux, you get that choice, but you get it before you install. And then you can still have that choice to customize and tweak after you've installed. You get double choice, and that's extremely confusing for users. It's a daunting proposition. Now, there's also a second side to that argument. We could say that out of the 275 plus Linux distributions, most of them are never mentioned to anybody. Anybody ever heard of Voyager Live? SourceMage Linux? Linux OS? I didn't think so. Well, I'm pretty sure somebody will pop up in the comments and tell me that they've used one of these at some point, but that's the exception. So the choice isn't really between 275 plus Linux distributions. It's between 10 to 15 major Linux distributions that everybody is recommending. But that's still an enormous decision to make, an enormous amount of choice. And you'll find conflicting information online. People saying that this thing is trash and others saying that it's the best thing ever. It's going to create confusion and it's going to put users off. And it also creates the risk of having a user try the distro that isn't right for their needs at all. If a complete beginner ends up using Gentoo or Arch, they're going to run away. They're never going to use Linux ever again because it's going to seem way too complex for them. You don't get a second chance to make a good first impression. So, do we have too many Linux distributions? Absolutely yes. This is Linux's biggest blessing and biggest curse. It provides tons of choices. There are choices for every single user needs, but it also breeds confusion for users. They will have to spend a lot of time researching, looking for answers online. They're gonna basically waste some time with trial and error, and that's confusing. But does having too many distributions prevent the major Linux distros from advancing at a rapid pace? Of course not. The Archers, OpenSUSEs, sorry, I can't help but pronounce it this way, it's just too much fun. The Ubuntus, the Fedoras, the Manjaros, the elementary OSs of the world would surely love to have more contributors, more maintainers, more testers. But does it mean that if we restricted the use of Linux to only these distributions by a magical mean, would this mean that this distro would move a lot faster and get more done and get more stable immediately? Of course not. And that's fine. It's the way Linux and open source systems work. It's basically hyper-accelerated evolution. Everybody's trying to test a new different way of doing things, and some of them survive creating different species, and some of them don't survive because they didn't add anything really new to the mix or anything better than what existed. It's a fine way of developing software, and there is nothing we can do about it. It is still an issue. It is still confusing for users, but it doesn't mean that reducing the number of distro is the right choice. The right choice is helping Linux users try to find the right distribution for them to alleviate that choice anxiety. We can make videos, write tutorials, write blog articles, create Linux user groups locally to meet people in person. We can go to user forums. There are plenty of stuff that we can do instead of just saying, we have too many distros, stop making distros, because it doesn't help. It doesn't help users, and it won't make new distros stop popping up. The Linux desktop is growing. It's growing slowly, very slowly, but its market share is growing. So it means that we are still doing something right. It could be faster, certainly. But the major Linux distributions are still gathering some users. So all I can say is that having too many distros, it's not a roadblock, it's just a speed bump. So this video was made possible by Slimbook. If you don't know about them, they're a Spain-based Linux hardware manufacturer. They have Linux laptops and desktops for all budgets, all sizes, all needs. They ship worldwide, they have all keyboard layouts that you could want, and I only use their stuff nowadays, their desktop, laptop, and keyboard. I can only recommend them, so if you need a new Linux device, check out the link in the description below. So thank you guys for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't stay to like and subscribe, or dislike and tell me why in the comments if you didn't enjoy the video. If you want to watch somewhere else than on YouTube, I'm also on Odyssey, and if you want to help me turn this into a full-time job, because I am going full-time at the end of October, you can join my amazing Patreon subscribers and YouTube members and get access to a weekly patroncast and the right to vote on the next topics I cover. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!